At 1:08 on Christmas morning, my daughter called me crying. "Dad, why are there ambulances all over the television?" I pushed myself upright in the folding chair where I had fallen asleep, still wearing my wet boots. The fellowship hall around me was quiet now. Paper cups, wool blankets, and half-eaten sandwiches covered the tables. Across the room, 27 elderly residents from Lakeshore Towers were finally resting. "What television?" I asked. "Channel 12. They keep showing you carrying that woman through the snow. They said the building could have killed everyone inside." I looked down at my right hand. A strip of gauze covered the cut across my palm. My jacket smelled like gasoline, cold air, and smoke from the church kitchen. "Everybody got out," I said. "That's what matters." My daughter went silent. Then, in a smaller voice, she asked, "Why were you there?" I almost told her the easy answer. The heating system had failed. The church needed volunteers. I had spent 36 years repairing railroad signal equipment, so people assumed I could fix anything with wires attached to it. But that was not the whole truth. The whole truth was that 12 hours earlier, my daughter had told me there was no place for me at Christmas. 4 days before that phone call, I was standing in my basement workshop in Erie, Pennsylvania, trying to make an old music box play again. The box had belonged to my mother. It was walnut, scratched along one side, with a tiny brass key and a painted winter scene on the lid. When my daughter Claire was little, she used to wind it too tightly and dance around the kitchen while it played Silent Night. Now Claire was 36, married, and raising 2 children of her own. Her daughter, Nora, had recently discovered music boxes. Every time she visited my house, she asked if she could hold the old one. So I spent most of December repairing the spring, polishing the brass, and replacing the faded velvet inside. I had just gotten the melody to play without slowing down when my phone rang. Claire. I wiped the grease from my hands and answered. "Hey, sweetheart." "Hi, Dad." That was all she said. Parents learn to hear the words their children do not say. Claire's voice had a careful quality to it, the way people sound when they have practiced a conversation several times and still do not want to begin. "What happened?" I asked. "Nothing happened." "Then why do you sound like you're calling from a hostage negotiation?" She gave a nervous laugh, but it disappeared quickly. "Mom and Russell are having Christmas at their house this year." Russell was my former wife's new husband. They had married 8 months earlier after knowing each other for less than a year. I had met him 4 times. He sold commercial insurance, wore expensive watches, and treated every conversation like a meeting he was supposed to lead. He was not openly rude to me. He simply behaved as though my existence was an administrative complication. "That's fine," I said. "What time should I be there?" Claire did not answer. I set down the screwdriver in my hand. "Claire, Russell wants this to be their first real Christmas as a married couple. They've been married since April." "I know. And it's December." "I know, Dad." I waited. Finally, she said, "He thinks it might be uncomfortable if you come." For a moment, the only sound in my basement was the music box playing too slowly. I reached over and stopped it. "Uncomfortable? For whom? Please don't make this harder." "I'm asking a question." She took a breath. "For Russell, and maybe for Mom." I leaned against the workbench. "All right. I can do Christmas Eve with you and the kids. Mom already planned a family dinner. Christmas morning, then. I'll make pancakes. The kids can open my gifts here. Russell wants everyone there early. Then bring them on the 26th. Another silence. That one told me more than her words had. "This isn't about the schedule," I said. "Dad, you're asking me to disappear for the entire holiday. No one is asking you to disappear. What would you call it?" Her voice tightened. "It's one Christmas." I looked at the music box on my bench. Beside it sat a small telescope for my grandson, Mason, and a wooden train I had built for Nora's dollhouse. "You know what I remember?" I said. "When you were 9, your mother and I drove to 3 different houses on Christmas Day because you were afraid one of your grandparents would feel left out. That was different." "How?" "Everything was different then." I almost argued. I almost reminded her of the nights I had driven through freezing rain to pick her up from college. I almost mentioned the hospital waiting room where I sat for 14 hours when Nora was born. I almost listed every birthday, recital, broken furnace, dead battery, and emergency loan. But love stops being love when you present it like an invoice. So I said, "I hear what you're asking." Relief entered her voice immediately. "Thank you, Dad." That hurt more than the request. Before she hung up, I said, "I won't come. But understand something, sweetheart. You are not changing one dinner. You are deciding who counts as family when counting becomes inconvenient. She did not answer. The call ended a few seconds later. I remained in the basement until the furnace came on. Then I wound the music box again. The melody sounded normal now. I wished I did. The next 2 days passed quietly. I wrapped Mason's telescope, Nora's train, and the music box. Inside the box, beneath the velvet lining, I had attached a small brass plate. For Nora, it read, "There will always be room for you in Grandpa's house." I considered removing it. I left it there. On Christmas Eve morning, I drove to Claire's neighborhood before the snow became heavy. Her house sat near the edge of Mill Creek, in a development where every mailbox matched and every driveway was wide enough for 3 cars. I parked across the street. Through the front window, I could see a tall tree, garland along the staircase, and people moving through the living room. Claire's husband, Ben, was carrying a tray. Mason ran past wearing a red sweater. Nora pressed both hands against the glass, watching snowflakes gather on the shrubs. I stayed in the truck until she turned away. Claire had told me not to come. I was not going to make her explain my presence to the people she had chosen. I carried the gifts to the side porch, where deliveries were usually left. I sent her a text. "Gifts are by the kitchen door. Merry Christmas. Tell the kids Grandpa loves them." Her reply came less than a minute later. "Thank you, Dad. I'm sorry this is awkward." Awkward. The word people use when they want a smaller name for something painful. I returned to my truck and drove home. My house had been built in 1958, back when people believed every family needed a dining room. Mine had not been used for an actual family dinner in months. I made chili, watched part of an old football game, and tried not to look at the clock. At 3, I received a photograph from Claire. Mason was holding the telescope. Nora hugged the wooden train. Behind them stood my former wife, Diane, with one arm around Russell. The music box was not in the picture. I typed 3 different replies and erased all of them. Finally, I sent a thumbs up. Around 5, the lake effect snow intensified. Wind struck the windows in long bursts. The weather station advised people to remain home unless travel was necessary. At 6:30, I put on my coat. For one foolish minute, I considered driving to Claire's house. Not to confront anyone, not to ruin dinner. I told myself I only wanted to see the children for 5 minutes. Then I imagined standing on the porch, waiting while someone decided whether to open the door. I took off the coat. A family invitation given after begging is not an invitation. It is permission granted under pressure. At 7:12, my phone buzzed. The message came from St. Bridget's Church. Emergency volunteers needed. Lakeshore Towers has lost heat. Residents being moved to temporary shelter. Drivers and extra hands requested. I had helped St. Bridget's outreach program for years. Usually I repaired donated space heaters, checked smoke alarms, or drove groceries to older residents. I replied that I was coming. The trip downtown took twice as long as usual. Snow swept across West 8th Street, erasing the lane markings. Cars moved slowly beneath the yellow glow of streetlights. Lakeshore Towers was a 9-story apartment building near the bay. Most of its residents were over 70. When I arrived, people crowded the lobby in coats, robes, slippers, and knitted hats. The building manager, a young man named Caleb, hurried toward me. "Mr. Hale, thank God. The boiler controls are dead, and the backup power keeps dropping." "I'm retired," I reminded him. "Electricity doesn't know that." I followed him toward the service corridor. The hallway smelled wrong, not strong, not enough to panic anyone. Just a faint mix of gasoline and exhaust. "Where's the generator?" I asked. "Loading garage." "Inside?" "The door is open." That wasn't my question. We reached the lower level. A portable gasoline generator sat several feet inside the garage, powering extension cords that disappeared through a fire door. The outer garage door was raised about 2 feet, but wind had blown snow against the opening. The exhaust had nowhere to go. I shut the generator off. Caleb stared at me. "What are you doing?" "We need those lights." "We need air more." As if to prove the point, a woman in the corridor leaned against the wall. "I feel dizzy," she said. Another resident complained of a headache. Years earlier, I had worked in signal sheds, maintenance tunnels, and equipment rooms where ventilation could mean the difference between a bad day and a funeral. Carbon monoxide does not announce itself. It gives you a headache, makes you tired, and waits for you to decide you are only getting old. I called 911. Then I pulled the fire alarm. Caleb grabbed my arm. Shouldn't we wait for the fire department? No. The alarm began to scream. Residents opened apartment doors. Some looked frightened. Some looked irritated. One man shouted that he had already survived Korea and was not standing outside in his pajamas. I moved to the lobby. Listen to me, I called. We may have exhaust entering the building. Take your coat, leave everything else, and follow the volunteers. People respond better when you give them one clear thing to do. St. Bridget's volunteers began moving residents toward waiting vans. Firefighters arrived within minutes and confirmed elevated carbon monoxide levels on the lower floors. The situation changed from inconvenient to dangerous very quickly. An elderly woman named Marjorie Bell refused to leave without her cat. You can get another cat, a firefighter told her. Marjorie pointed one shaking finger at him. You can get another fireman. I found the cat under her bed, wrapped it in a towel, and carried both animal and owner toward the stairwell. The elevator had been shut down. Marjorie lived on the 6th floor. She was 81 and used a walker. We made it down 2 flights before she stopped. I can't breathe, she said. You're breathing. Not well. Neither am I, but I'm trying not to complain in front of a lady. She gave me a look that could have stripped paint. We continued. On the 3rd floor landing, the lights went out. Someone below screamed. Emergency lights flickered on, weak and yellow. Marjorie tightened her grip on my arm. The cat pushed its head out of the towel and scratched my wrist. Your cat doesn't appreciate rescue work, I said. She doesn't appreciate men. That makes 2 of us tonight. Marjorie laughed. The sound settled both of us. By the time we reached the lobby, firefighters were moving through the building with meters. Snow blew through the open doors. Residents were being placed in vans, church buses, and ambulances. A television crew had arrived to cover the power outage. Their reporters stood beneath an umbrella while the cameraman filmed firefighters carrying equipment. I helped Marjorie into a church van. Then Caleb ran toward me. There's still someone in 4B. Mr. Alvarez. He's on oxygen and won't answer. A firefighter heard him and headed inside. I followed until he told me to stay back. I did not. Mr. Alvarez was conscious but confused. His oxygen concentrator had lost power, and he had tried to use a portable cylinder without opening the valve properly. The firefighter handled the medical side. I carried the cylinder and helped guide the wheelchair. Outside, the pavement was hidden beneath fresh snow. My boot slipped on the curb. I went down on one knee. The oxygen cylinder struck my hand, slicing my palm against a metal edge. For a few seconds, I saw nothing but white. A paramedic helped me stand. You hurt? I'm 66. The answer is always yes. You'll have to be specific. He examined my hand and wrapped it. My knee ached, but it could hold my weight. The last resident left Lakeshore Towers shortly before 11. Firefighters later told us the carbon monoxide readings near the lower floors had climbed high enough to hospitalize people. Had the residents gone back to their apartments and fallen asleep, Christmas morning could have looked very different. St. Bridget's opened its fellowship hall as temporary housing. We arranged cots, served soup, found extra socks, and tried to keep everyone calm. The news crew followed us there. I was carrying a box of blankets when the reporter stopped me. Sir, were you the person who identified the generator problem? I was the person standing closest to it. Can we get your name? Thomas Hale. Do you work for the building? No. Then why were you there on Christmas Eve? The camera light shone directly into my face. I was tired, wet, and in no mood to create a polished answer. The church asked for help, I said. Didn't you have family plans? I glanced past her at Marjorie, who sat on a cot with her cat inside her coat. Mr. Alvarez was drinking soup while a paramedic checked his oxygen. Not tonight, I said. I was available, and these folks needed somebody. That was all. No accusation. No mention of Claire, no dramatic speech. The reporter thanked me and moved on. After midnight, most of the residents were settled. I sat near the wall, closed my eyes, and woke to my daughter's call. Dad, why are there ambulances all over the television? Now, as I listened to Claire crying, I understood that she had seen more than the rescue. She had seen where I spent the Christmas she asked me to miss. Are you hurt? She asked. Small cut. Why didn't you call me? You were busy. You could have told me. I looked around the hall. Volunteers moved quietly between sleeping residents. I didn't think you needed to know where I was, I said. She went silent. The sentence sounded colder than I intended, but I did not take it back. Dad, she whispered. Nora opened the music box. I hoped she would. She found the plate inside. I closed my eyes. In the background, I heard a child crying. Then Nora's voice. Is Grandpa coming tomorrow? Claire covered the phone, but not quickly enough. When she returned, her breathing was uneven. Dad, can we come see you in the morning? Not in the morning. Why? Because I'll still be helping here. We can come there. I considered it. Call first. That's all you're going to say? What would you like me to say? I don't know. Neither do I. We ended the call without fixing anything. That was probably the first honest thing either of us had done all week. Claire called again at 9 the next morning. This time she did not ask whether I had forgiven her. She asked whether the residents needed breakfast. An hour later she arrived with Ben, Mason, Nora, 6 boxes of pastries, 2 large containers of coffee, and a case of juice. Nora ran toward me, then stopped when she saw the bandage on my hand. Does it hurt, Grandpa? Only when people ask me about it. She hugged my waist carefully. Mason wanted to know whether the building had exploded. I told him no. He looked disappointed. Claire stood several feet away, holding the music box. Can we talk? She asked. Later. Her face fell, but she nodded. That mattered. The old Claire would have pushed for a conversation because she wanted relief. This Claire picked up a stack of paper plates and began serving breakfast. She stayed 4 hours. She helped Marjorie locate cat food. Ben drove Mr. Alvarez's niece to the pharmacy. Mason played checkers with 3 retired steelworkers and lost every game. Nora sat beside Marjorie and wound the music box until the melody drove half the room crazy. Claire did not corner me. She did not cry in front of everyone. She simply stayed. 3 days later, the Lakeshore residents were allowed to return home. The building management replaced the damaged boiler controls and promised new emergency procedures. The television story had spread farther than I expected. Former co-workers called. People from church left messages. A local newspaper asked for an interview. I declined everything. I did not want to become a symbol. Symbols are easier to admire than actual people. A week after New Year's, Lakeshore Towers held a dinner for the firefighters, paramedics, church volunteers, and neighbors who had helped. Marjorie insisted I attend. If you don't come, she said, I will tell everyone you were too frightened. Of what? Public gratitude. She was not wrong. The dinner took place in the building's community room. Folding tables were covered with white paper cloths. Someone had hung a banner that read, Welcome Home. Claire came with Ben and the children. My former wife did not attend. Neither did Russell. I was relieved. Near the end of the evening, the same reporter from Channel 12 stood and thanked everyone. Then she asked me to say a few words. I refused. Marjorie struck the floor with her cane. Get up there, Thomas. When an 81-year-old woman publicly commands you, dignity has limits. I walked to the front. The reporter handed me the microphone. What do you remember most about that night? She asked. I looked at the residents. Some had known me for only a few hours before trusting me to guide them through dark stairwells. Then I saw Claire at the back table. She was not hiding. She was looking directly at me. The cold wasn't the hardest part, I said. Neither was the generator. The room became still. The hardest part was realizing how quickly strangers can make room for you when they see you are needed, and how easily people who have known you all their lives can forget to do the same. I did not say Claire's name. I did not mention Christmas dinner. I did not need to. The good part, I continued, is that being forgotten by someone does not make you worthless. It only means you may have been measuring your worth in the wrong place. I handed the microphone back before I said too much. People applauded. I did not look at Claire again until the dinner ended. She found me near the coat rack. Dad, I turned. Her eyes were red, but she was not crying. I owe you an apology. I waited. I let Mom and Russell make their discomfort more important than your place in our family. Then I told myself it was only one day because that made it easier to live with. I said nothing. She continued. You gave me 3 different ways to see you. I rejected all of them. I read our messages again. There's no excuse. That was the first apology I believed because it did not contain the word but. I'm sorry, she said. Not because you were on television. Not because people found out. I'm sorry because Nora asked me why Grandpa had to be alone so someone else could feel like family, and I had no answer that didn't make me ashamed. I looked across the room at Nora, who was helping Marjorie place the cat in a carrier. Children have a talent for removing the decorations from a lie, I said. Claire gave a small, sad laugh. Can you forgive me? Yes. Her shoulders dropped with relief. Then I added, that does not mean everything goes back to the way it was. The relief disappeared. I know. Do you? I'm trying to. I put on my coat. Forgiveness is a decision. Trust is a pattern. We'll see what pattern you choose. She nodded. Okay. That was all. No embrace in front of the crowd. No promise that the pain had vanished. Just a beginning. Claire began calling twice a week. At first, our conversations were careful. She asked about my knee. I asked about the children. Neither of us mentioned Christmas. 2 weeks later, she invited me to Mason's science fair. I told her I would check my calendar. There was a pause. Before Christmas, I had never made Claire wait for an answer. I rearranged appointments, canceled plans, and drove through storms whenever she called. Of course, she said. Let me know. I went to the science fair. Russell was there with Diane. When he saw me, his smile tightened. Claire noticed. She walked over, linked her arm through mine, and said, Dad, Mason's project is in the gym. He saved you a seat. Russell looked away. Nothing else was said. That moment repaired more than any speech could have. In February, Diane called me. She said Russell felt humiliated by how people were interpreting the situation. I told her I had not named him publicly. That isn't the point, she said. It is exactly the point. He thinks Claire is choosing sides now. She is 36. She can choose where she stands. You're enjoying this. No, I said. I'm simply no longer fixing everyone's discomfort. Diane ended the call angrily. For once, I did not spend the rest of the day wondering whether I should apologize. Spring came late to Erie. The snowbanks shrank into gray piles. The bay thawed. My knee stopped predicting every weather change with perfect accuracy. I continued volunteering at St. Bridget's, but I also made other changes. I joined a model railroad club I had been putting off for years. I started teaching basic home safety workshops at Lakeshore Towers. Marjorie attended every session and corrected me whenever she thought my instructions were incomplete. Claire brought the children to my house every other Sunday. The first time she arrived, I expected her to cancel. She came 10 minutes early. The next visit, Ben helped repair the loose railing on my back steps. Mason learned how to solder 2 wires without burning his fingers. Nora asked if she could keep the music box at my house because she liked listening to it while we baked cookies. I said yes. The visits did not become perfect. Claire and I argued once about Diane. Another time, she accused me of keeping her at a distance to punish her. Maybe I am keeping some distance, I said. That is not punishment. It is what people do when they are learning whether the bridge is safe. She did not like the answer. She came back the next Sunday anyway. In June, Nora had a dance recital. Afterward, Diane invited everyone to dinner at a restaurant near the theater. Russell said the reservation was for 6. There were 7 of us. Before I could offer to leave, Claire spoke. Then, add a chair. Russell frowned. The table won't fit another chair. Claire looked at him calmly. My father is staying. If the table is too small, we'll find a larger one. No one argued. The restaurant moved us to another table. It was a simple thing, almost embarrassingly simple. But when Claire placed the extra chair beside Mason, I had to look down at the menu until my eyes cleared. By autumn, we had found a rhythm, not the old rhythm. Something healthier. I stopped treating every invitation as proof that I mattered. Claire stopped assuming my time belonged to her. Sometimes I said no. Sometimes she did. Neither of us turned it into abandonment. In early December, Claire came to my house alone. She found me in the basement building wooden centerpieces for Sraint. Bridget's Christmas dinner. What are those? She asked. Tables. They look small. They're centerpieces shaped like tables. Why? Because real tables are expensive. She laughed and sat on the workbench. Then she became serious. Mom called about Christmas. Christmas. I kept sanding. What does she want? She and Russell are hosting again. I assumed they would. She asked us to spend the whole day there. I waited. I told her no. The sandpaper stopped in my hand. Claire continued. We're going there for breakfast. Then Ben and the kids and I would like to come here for dinner. You don't have to prove anything. I'm not proving it. I'm choosing it. I studied her face. What did Russell say? That it would make things uncomfortable. And? I told him discomfort won't kill him. I laughed despite myself. Claire smiled. Can we come? I looked around the basement at the wooden centerpieces, boxes of donated decorations, and a list of guests taped to the wall. There will be a lot of people here. How many? 40, maybe 50. Her eyebrows rose. That year, I had decided to host Christmas dinner at St. Bridget's for anyone who did not have somewhere else to go. Lakeshore residents, widowers, divorced parents, college students who could not travel home, and anyone else who needed a place. Claire read the names on the wall. Do you need help? I always need help. Then we'll be here. Christmas arrived cold and bright. Claire, Ben, Mason, and Nora came at 2 in the afternoon, carrying casseroles, pies, folding chairs, and more dinner rolls than any reasonable group could eat. Marjorie arrived wearing a red hat and immediately took control of the kitchen. At 4, every table was full. Nora placed handwritten name cards in front of each seat. Some said Grandma, some said Mr. Jenkins or Miss Alvarez. One simply said new friend, because no one had learned the man's name yet. At the center table, beside Mason, she placed a card that read Grandpa. Is that my assigned seat? I asked. Yes, she said. You're not allowed to move. I sat down. Claire took the chair across from me. For a few seconds, we looked at each other over the crowded table. Around us, people passed bowls, laughed too loudly, argued over football, and told stories no one had asked to hear. It was not peaceful. It was not elegant. It was family. After dinner, Nora brought the old music box from my house. She wound the brass key and placed it in the middle of the table. The melody began. Claire listened, then looked at the plate inside. There will always be room for you in Grandpa's house. I didn't deserve that message last year, she said. It wasn't written for you. I know. She glanced toward Nora. Then she said, but I'm grateful you left room for me anyway. I shook my head. I left a door unlocked. You're the one who kept walking through it. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. The cut from the previous Christmas had left a thin scar across my palm. I could still see it. I could also see every chair around me filled. For years, I had believed my life's value depended on whether my daughter needed me. Then one lonely Christmas taught me something I should have understood long before retirement. Being needed is not the same as being loved. Being invited is not the same as belonging. And a person should never spend his life waiting for someone else to decide whether there is room for him. Sometimes the only answer is to build a larger table. That way, no one has to beg for a chair. Love does not ask us to accept every hurt, but it does invite us to leave the door open for honest change. Thomas found peace when he stopped begging for a place and began creating one for others. In real life, we can protect our dignity, speak with kindness, and still make room for forgiveness, one steady action, one shared meal, and one open chair at a time. A small note for you. This story was created and fictionalized by AI for entertainment while also sharing a positive life lesson.